Why
Next
should
again.
Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
You
racism?
did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that. Because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
what is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place?
That is not peaceful protest.
No, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else. And he would know.
What is
it was
radical
totally
about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas, and frankly, very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the
Oh,
racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't
than he
know.
does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to very many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these
Absolutely
cities
ridiculous.
don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
You
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
violent
Are you
crime.
in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in
it a little
favor
bit
of law and order? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm in favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
This is
Law
left.
and
Let him.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration. It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're now,
is
you're,
president of
Mr.
the
President,
United
you're going
States of
to,
America.
Mr. President,
Every record in the book.
Mr. President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Since we had trouble, we're Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like
He
you've never
wouldn't
seen
know a
before.
suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
I was
better.
raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles and racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs, to their safety, is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for $400 million
Okay, guys.
law enforcement
Oh,
assistance.
marami na kayong narinig tungkol sa debate nila ng magiging presidente dito sa Amerika, next president. Okay.
We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know
See what
the people in
happened?
the communities.
Who's
when
gonna
crime
win this
went
debate?
down. It didn't go up,
Okay.
it went down.
Until
And so we have to be
next
very-
vlog.
They're talking about.
See you.
That's not what.
Bye.
That's not